Across the pond, Zoran Mamdani has been sworn in the last few hours as mayor of New York City. It's interesting, he didn't do the usual in terms of his inauguration. It wasn't inside City Hall, but in a disused subway station underneath City Hall. Let's have a listen.
I,
Zoran Mamdani,
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of New York,
the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Charter of the City of New York,
and the Charter of the City of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of the Mayor of the City of New York, according to the best of my ability. So help me God. Congratulations, Mr. Mayor.
Well, there will be another bigger and slightly more conventional ceremony later on at City Hall with Bernie Sanders inaugurating Zoran Mamdani. Here's the Times New York correspondent Will Pavia.
It was an extraordinary moment. Young mayor, the youngest in over a century, and he chose the subway station because he saw it as a symbol of a time when New York built very grand infrastructure projects. It was one of the first 28 subway stations to be built in New York. The subway line that ran from there up into Harlem opened in October of 1904. And Mamdani argues that under his administration, New York will once again do ambitious things. Now, his swearing-in ceremony, which was private in the subway station, will be followed by, later today, by a public ceremony presided over by his hero, the socialist Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, and that will take place at 1 p.m. and there'll be an accompanying block party on Broadway.
That was New York correspondent for the Times, Will Pavia. And joining us now is Professor of International Politics at University College Dublin, Scott Lucas. Good morning and Happy New Year, Scott.
And a Happy New Year to you.
Scott, we just heard the cheering and the swearing in of Zoran Mamdani in quite an unusual venue, which we'll come on to in a minute. He's played a blinder so far, hasn't he? 34-year-old. He got a huge majority in the election. He's charmed Donald Trump already, brought some showmanship to local politics. But we do have to ask, what can he actually get done?
Well, let's talk about what Zoran Mamdani wants to get done, because as significant as the personality is, and I do think he is a rising political star, arguably it's the policies that are going to be even more significant. He is calling for free childcare, which will enable many people in New York to be able to go to work without the worry of that burdensome cost. He's talking about help with the cost of rent for millions of New Yorkers, which is a serious issue in a city with very, very high cost. He's talking about free transport. He's talking about putting or supporting grocery stores in some neighborhoods with city support in areas that really don't have adequate provision. Now, these have been smeared by Donald Trump and his like as being communist or Marxist or wildly radical. The fundamental here is that these are policies of social welfare that I think many Americans support. This is beyond left or right, Democrat or Republican. The economic issue, can he fund them? Mamdani estimates the cost of these policies at around $7 billion. He and his supporters say that they can raise about $10 billion with support from New York State, for example, through an increase of 2% in income tax on those making more than $1 million a year, and an increase in the tax on corporations. So it is economically viable in principle, but it's going to be in practice. The real test is going to be that New York is facing serious economic challenges. Millions of New Yorkers have been feeling pain. Can Mamdani help turn this around?
I mean, I've got so many questions from that for you. Yes, so he has great plans to improve the lot, particularly for the hardest up New Yorkers. But it's not within his gift to actually make these policies in terms of funding, is it? That actually is the decision of the state legislature. So he actually has to go to state in order to get this funding through, doesn't he?
Yeah, and I think that raises a wider political issue that a lot of media have missed because of just that focus on Mamdani. The specifics are that, for example, to raise the corporate tax that's a state decision. So it's one that Mamdani's proposing, but he's hoping to get the Democratic government, Governor Kathy Hochul, and the state legislature on board with that. The city can propose the raising of income tax on the wealthiest New Yorkers, but the state legislature has to approve it. But in a sense, that means this is more than a New York City issue. This is going to be an economic proposal, a project by a state that's larger than many countries in the world. And in the same way that I think California under Gavin Newsom is raising this alternative to Trumpism, can New York State, both at city and state level, put that alternative to Trumpism, which is very, very pragmatic. It's not ideological. And I think this is going to be a defining test, which is important for New Yorkers across the state, not just in the city, but I think will be important for Americans as we move into the 2026 election.
Absolutely. I mean, many people do look to New York to take a lead on things. But he also he need to tread a little bit of a fine line, when it comes to how he treats the very wealthy, Scott, because many of them, I lived in New York for a long time. I left in 2021. A lot of the very wealthiest fled New York already for Florida or Texas, which variously have zero income tax or zero corporation tax. So much finance is now running out of Florida. So much tech is running out of Austin because of the very, very low taxes. In order to fund all of this, he does need New York to remain a financial hub, doesn't he? So he's got to be a little bit careful how he treats the very wealthiest.
Yeah, but I think this isn't overblown. And to be honest with you, this is sort of a scare story whipped up by the Trumpist and Ben Mamdani's opponents. We're not talking like a 98% tax on income, that specter of what you had in the United Kingdom back in the 1970s. We're talking about just a 2% increase, which is not a huge amount.
I suppose it depends how much you're earning.
Well, yeah, but if you're making over $1 million, you're pretty much in a place where you can afford to pay a bit more to be income tax, to be honest with you. And if you're talking about a corporation, the fact of the matter is that you're in New York City. You're there because it is the financial hub of the world. You're there because it is one of the business hubs of the world. It is not that easy to simply relocate to a Texas or to an Alabama where I grew up, because that's not where you make your money. This comes down to a fundamental principle, which I think is going to be interesting for UK politics moving forward as well. And that is, do the richest in society, do those that make the most, make their contributions to the social good of everyone. And I think that's something that, of course, since the 1970s, we've had rhetoric trying to get us away from that, given the economic challenges of 2025. And this is something that people on the right feel as well as on the left. This affordability issue, I think, is one that you have to focus on rather than the scare stories about people like Elon Musk pitching up and going to Texas or Mars or somewhere else.
I mean, aside from his policies, he is an incredible figurehead, isn't he, of a sort of new or revised leftist movement. He's optimistic, he's youthful, he's charismatic, he's a Muslim. He used to be a hip hop artist. His wife's an artist. I mean, he represents a very welcome anti-establishment alternative for a Democratic Party that we're looking a little bit pale and male and stale, doesn't he?
Yeah, and I think we can talk about the Democrats moving forward in 2026, but it's not going to take just a Mamdani. You need Mamdani fits New York City. You're going to need Democrats in Texas, in Virginia, in California, in Arizona that fit the needs of those people. So it won't all be the progressivism of Mamdani. Democrats need a big tent, in other words, to deal with that priority issue of economy, the priority issue of healthcare, and the priority issue of just simply having a decent politics rather than the form practiced by Donald Trump.